Slow lighting reveals the room is sparse. An old bed, a bedside table. Wilde is lying in bed on his back, dying. His mouth is wide open. His breathing is laboured and heavy. Attended by a page boy carrying a small handbell and a tin, Victoria appears suddenly in the doorway in her bath chair, a reticule in her lap, a walking stick tucked in at her side.
Mr. Wilde! Mr. Wilde! Rise, sir, from that recumbent posture.
Wilde wakes. He's very groggy, disorientated. The page moves Victoria closer to the bedside. He fusses over her before placing the handbell and tin in her lap. From his pocket, he produces an embroidered napkin and tucks it into her collar, smoothing it out down her front.
Where's Robbie? Where's Reggie?
Your young friends have gone. Everyone's gone.
Majesty, it's a single honour.
We heard of your parlous state, your poverty, your operation. How is your poor ear?
I bear it with what fortitude I can. Having had some abatement, I have been out in a carriage with my friends.
We hope you have been behaving very well.
I have not been feeling very well.
In that case, you likely have. Behaving well and feeling well rarely go together.
I'm dying, Majesty.
And have been for some weeks. We really think it is high time that you made up your mind whether you are going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying is absurd.
The doctor says I cannot live.
Then we hope that you will act on his medical advice. Our doctors say much the same, and we intend to follow their guidance unquestioningly. We shall not be long after you. You had the last rites, we believe?
Oh, yes. It was a comfort when the Catholic Church received me in.
We are glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind.
I will not live out the century. The English people would not stand for it.
He sits on the edge, trying to put his shoes on.
No need for shoes for you now.
He throws the shoes aside, looks at her, then shrugs.
Do you have any cigarettes?
Certainly not. We only smoke opiates.
Perhaps a glass of absinthe?
Mr. Wilde, absinthe is a drink for bohemians and anarchists. It is not a fitting beverage for a queen.
She rummages under her voluminous skirts and brings out a hip flask.
You may partake of this. Just a little, mind. A cocktail of claret, scotch and laudanum. I swear by it. I never go anywhere without it.
He takes a drink and finds it to his liking. Victoria has another rummage and produces a cream cake. She appears childishly happy.
Mr. Wilde, we heard how you honoured us on our Diamond Jubilee, a party for the children of Berneval.
I love children. I have not seen my own for 6 years. I miss them dreadfully.
Children are the price one pays for the pleasures of Congress. Sometimes we look at ours and ask if it was worth it. Look what childbirth has done to our figure.
She drops the cake into her lap, picks up the handbell and rings it delicately.
Children are an avoidable pleasure.
Mr. Wilde, do you imagine that we would form an alliance with a prophylactic?
You are right, Majesty. One should never avoid a pleasure.
Ah, and it was a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Oh, Albert.
He dozes off. Wilde drinks more of the elixir. Slowly, the alcohol and drugs take hold. He sits up and attempts to get up, but fails. He has another drink. He attempts to get up again, successfully this time. He stands a little unsteadily. He takes another sip, becoming more stable, appearing to be more like his old arrogant self. He coughs deferentially. Victoria slowly awakens. She turns her chair towards Wilde.
To my party in your honour, I invited local schoolboys and their teacher, Monsieur Hossin, and the postman and the curé, all devoted to your majesty. There were Union flags, the little children sang the Marseillaise, and then God Save the Queen.
How charming. We hear you had a giant cake.
With Jubilé de la Reine Victoria, iced in pink and green.
We love cake in all its forms. Did you have chocolates too?
Yes, and grenadine and strawberries and cream.
Cream too. We love cream. Chocolate, cake and cream. You seem to have lived entirely for pleasure.
Pleasure has been my downfall.
Mr. Wilde, tell me frankly, was it true what was said at your trials?
I denied it, always.
That was not what we asked. To lose one trial may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose 3 seems like carelessness or guiltiness.
Well, Your Majesty, I must confess, beauty in all its forms has always attracted me.
You need not be so mealy-mouthed. We have read Kraft Ebbing. You mean you are bisexual.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Oh, they count as heterosexuals. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate.
You are too kind.
We cannot say that we approve of you. You lavished too much mockery upon society, and that is vulgar. Never speak disrespectfully of society. Only people who can't get into it do that. Mr. Wilde, it may surprise you, but we like you. According to our son Bertie, you are the greatest wit in Europe.
Was the greatest wit.
He came
Was.
to all your opening nights
What a
and
talent
laughed
I once had.
immoderately.
All is gone.
We read your plays as they were published. We do so like to be amused.
But I am nothing with no audience, so what is left but a long, slow, lovely suicide?
We have been paying you a pension these last few years in thanks for our enjoyment. It is nothing short of a scandal that you should be treated so.
Oh, hypocrisy.
Why? Have you been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time? Now, that would be hypocrisy.
You say that you admire my work. Well then, has my private life to do with that? You punish me, not for what I do, but for what I am.
We punish no one. The law, the judge, the juries punish you.
You made the law, Your Majesty, that caused my downfall.
I, sir? What has it to do with me?
You signed it into law. You could have stopped it. You condemned me to a life of shame.
Shame you found thoroughly becoming. All those secrets, all those masks, your work thrived on it. You would not have it any other way.
Not only me, many others. Poor Francis Douglas, my Bosie's brother, shot himself the day after he got engaged because of rumours of a liaison with your Prime Minister, Rosebery, of whom you were so fond.
We were. We used to mother him, tell him he should wrap up warm.
What about your own beloved grandson, Prince Eddie?
What of him?
Because you did not stand up to Gladstone, you almost ruined your family.
We know not what you mean.
Does Cleveland Street mean nothing to you?
A baseless allegation of the press, fake news of a radical persuasion.
I was in France in '91. Your grandson had been there for 9 months before, and very red he was at some of the reporters' questions. The French press know everything about our royalty, more than we do ourselves. It is a form of envy.
Ah, do English.
I am not English.
You are obsessed with finding fault and sniffing scandal.
I am an Irish gentleman.
You may be Irish, sir, but you are no gentleman. You forfeited the right to be called a gentleman when you gave your poor wife the French disease.
Ha! A baseless rumour.
On this point, as on all points, we are firm.
Even if true, is that worse than giving your son and grandsons haemophilia?
How were we to know?
And how was I to know? I thought I was cured. Prince Leopold, your youngest child, your grandson, Prince Friedrich, only 3 years old. There will be more, many more. You have spread your fatal curse across the whole of Europe. There will not be a royal house from Spain to Russia that will be free of your tainted blood.
We did not know. How could we know?
Your doctors, they should have known.
They did not tell us if they did. We did not know.
Well, you know now.
Yes, we know now. Thank you, Mr. Wilde.
She fumbles in her lap. She fumbles in her lap for her reticule, which she accidentally knocks to the floor. Wilde picks it up and holds it out to her. She ignores him, fumbling still. In a panic, she grabs her bell and rings it madly. The page boy enters quickly. She flaps a hand around, pointing to the floor. Wilde looks at him questioningly. Seeing the reticule in Wilde's hand, the page raises his hands to indicate calm. Wilde realizes that Victoria is blind. The page boy takes the reticule from Wilde, then reaches for Victoria's hand, giving her the reticule. Victoria is visibly relieved and opens it. She takes out a handkerchief, dabs her eyes and mouth, and then returns it to the reticule. The page boy helps her to tuck it in her lap, safely behind the cake tin. Wilde's demeanour softens significantly.
Forgive me, Majesty.
Mr. Wilde, if you think we are going to knight you, you are very much mistaken. Much though you desired it.
She raises himself to a sitting position. She smiles wryly to herself in self-congratulation. With the page's help, levers herself out of the bath chair with the aid of the walking stick to stand. As she staggers, groggily unaware of where Wilde is, the page manoeuvres the bath chair behind her. Wilde gets to his feet, dodging Victoria, her bath chair, and the page.
Well, we will forgive you. You have a blazing cheek, which is half your function and all of your charm. Do you recall you had the nerve to ask us for a poem to feature in some magazine?
The Woman's World.
We, who could never in our whole life write one line of verse, serious or comic, or even make a rhyme. But we were flattered to be asked. We never showed it, but we were. And we liked the Woman's World, especially when your mother wrote of us.
She loses her balance. Wilde catches her and helps her back into a chair. He steps back as the page makes her comfortable.
Do you remember when we met?
We met so many.
A ruby satin jet. Such a regal walk.
No walking now for us.
I was unjust. It was not you who sealed my fate. It was many things. Most of all, I blame myself.
We blame that awful Henry Labouchere.
Labouchere.
Nothing
but
trouble. And nothing less than a Republican.
A troublemaker.
He wanted to convert the palace into a home for fallen women.
A troublemaker. You kept him from the cabinet. Gladstone wanted him, but you refused. Yet you could not refuse that vicious clause, sneaked into law when nobody was looking.
Please, don't start all that again.
He was, of course, an atheist.
Mr. Wilde, we have not much time. We have to go and plan my funeral.
When you deprive yourself of God,
The elements are all in place.
you have to play yourself at being one.
But we want some touches, personal mementos in the coffin. Oh, how we love a proper funeral.
I fear a pauper's grave for me.
You do not plan your funeral? Good, for men it is different. A funeral should come on a man as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter he can be allowed to arrange himself. We strongly advise that you have a haircut. Locks of hair make tasteful funeral gifts when arranged in pretty lockets.
I fear I am beyond arranging anything.
Quite right, for you are dead, and we must go. Strange to think we have so much in common.
We were both outsiders.
I alone with my 100 dolls in Kensington.
I prancing around the snobbish paddocks of high society. I worked hard to lose my accent.
We never needed to. I was the queen, geliebte Volksmutter.
Page enters carrying a blanket, which he, after removing the tin bell and reticle, tucks around her lap. He replaces the bell and reticle, then takes the tin away off stage. He returns and attends to the candles, some of which he douses, after which he returns to Victoria and attempts to start to push her off stage, which Victoria resists quite firmly and turns towards Wilde.
May I prevail upon you, Mr. Wilde, to push my bath chair?
Certainly, Majesty.
You know, Mr. Wilde, we are but 32 days away from the 20th century. I wonder what that century will make of us.
We will, of course, be two of the most famous figures
of this one,
and two
two
of the most recognizable.
And I will stand for something: order, stability, empire, loyalty,
Hypocrisy,
morality,
prudery, repression, Victorian values, a stick to beat my kind down the ages.
But I was not like that.
And I will stand for art, the rights of artists, and for courage in the face of persecution.
Irresponsibility, dissipation, depravity, shallowness, luxury, and unreliability.
But I am not like that.
I do not say you are, but so you will seem.
We are neither what we seem, but what we seem is what is useful. To set the coming century's theme more convenient than truthful. I was right. It is a world of masks.
I wore one just as much as you.
but I use mine to tell the truth.
While on mine the canker grew, so I was trapped by mine. Mine.
Victoria seems to have no further need of the chair. She stands up without the need of a stick and takes his arm. They come to the foot of the stage, turn to each other, looking deep into their eyes.
So here we are, each behind our mask. And you will take our mask, and you will not want to ask about a truth that's complicated by the lie that tells the truth that's still a lie. And as we disappear into the past, you will not hear us say goodbye. For we are always with you. Clichés, oh so ripe, full-blooded stereotype. Nature's opposite. And on our shoulders sits the battle of the 20th century. Two fat old queens. I use my wit to arm the liberation I throw my good fat weight upon the scales of decency. We are twin pillars of the century. You have to choose a side in the 20th century.